All right. Well, good morning. My name is Matt Pfeiffer. This is Conversations on Retail. We are so excited to continue Alex McCoy's series on digital transformation. And today her guest is Jehan Hamedi from founder and CEO of Vizit. Just a couple of things before we get started this morning. First of all, this series and others is presented by Westrock Coffee Company. They've got offices in 10 countries and they source coffee and tea from 35 various origin countries. For more information, you can visit westrockcoffee.com. Last thing I would say is that this is intended to be a conversation, not a presentation. So those who are joining us live, we hope that you will join the conversation, and you can do that by clicking on the Q&A button and then submitting your questions or comments or any sort of insight with us in writing. Again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And Alex, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex McCoy. I'm VP of Retailer Innovation at eGrocery. I am so excited to welcome my friend Jehan Hamedi here. He's the founder and CEO of Vizit. Today's conversation is going to be centered around AI. A few weeks ago, if you joined us, we welcomed the VP GM of Sam's Club member access platform, Lex Josephs, and we had a great conversation around the retail media network landscape. Today, I'm so excited and also nervous because I'm not as well educated in AI, but it's evolving the industry in such a way. I keep hearing about it in several different areas: chatbots, logistics, digital shelf, product development. So, whenever I was building out digital transformation lineup for speakers and subtopics, the first person I thought of, for me, the most knowledgeable person I've met to date in the retail industry on AI was Jehan. So Jehan, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today and share some of your expertise.
Thank you for having me, Alex. I'm really excited to be here. And you're selling yourself short. You know a ton about this already. And it's like you said, it's just a very exciting time to be in retail and a very exciting time to be thinking about new technology as applied to retail. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yesterday, I'm already going to start getting off path here, but yesterday I was having coffee with a professional friend who works in AI, and his comment to me, because I told him, hey, this is what we're doing tomorrow, I'm so excited. He was like, there's a misconception around AI. He goes, people think AI is going to take their job, but it's not. That's such a bad way of thinking it. It's a myth. What is going to happen is the person who learns and understands AI will take your job. What's your thinking on that? Do you agree with that statement?
I agree with that 100%. AI isn't going to replace you. Someone using AI is going to replace you. And it's because this technology now is just, it's so transformational. It's like having access to the internet for the first time. Just think about how much more efficient and how much more information you have access to, and all of the different ways you can kind of integrate that technology into work, into your personal life, into everything. And you think about other applications of AI outside of the retail space. Think about like radiologists. These are folks that are trained for years and they still make mistakes. And now the AI is never going to take away their expertise to diagnose and prescribe and kind of work with different patients to kind of make them better. But it can help identify and flag specific things automatically that can help inform their decision-making process. And you should think about AI the same way in retail and in CPG. It's a way to sort of enhance and augment. It's assistive in a way, and I think it's going to change everything.
I'm so glad you said that. One of the things I was thinking about in preparation of this, and we're going to get to understand better what Vizit's doing, but before we do, I'd love to just kind of dig deeper into what is AI. I started experimenting with ChatGPT lately, and I keep treating it like Google, right? I ask it, hey, make me smoothie recipes, or what are some great vegan smoothie recipes? And I keep hearing from professionals in the industry, don't treat it like Google. It's not Google. What does that mean? How should we be thinking, take it a little bit further, how should we be thinking about what is the power behind AI versus a search engine?
Yeah, so I think a way to think about AI is it's teaching machines to do and complete human-like tasks on a very human level. So, think about things like being able to recognize kind of different faces and identify different types of people, to be able to kind of respond to a question in a kind of human personalized way. AI is a very broad term, but at the end of the day, it's kind of giving computers human-like capabilities. And when you think about a search engine, and Google and others are integrating AI into their sort of search engine, into their process. But I think of AI as being something that, again, can take something that would have taken a huge amount of kind of time and energy and potentially kind of massive amounts of human resources, and you now kind of boil all that knowledge down into a machine that can then replicate those types of tasks and in many cases feelings. And so when we think about our world at Vizit, and we'll of course get into this a little bit later, but just think about your perception, how you perceive things when you notice and you enter a new room, or you enter a store, or you look at a new website or a social site. What you are seeing is creating a response mechanism in your brain. You're kind of instantaneously deciding and formulating an opinion about that. Mm. AI can now do that, which is really cool and very powerful, to be able to develop those human-like capabilities.
That's so amazing. Again, I use ChatGPT to ask it just the preparation. I was like, what are 5 key trends that AI is being used in the retail industry? One of them was visual search, which I think is kind of what you're saying. It's like now we're also able to search based on what we're seeing versus the keywords. Like keywording is almost becoming a little bit less relevant than it used to be. SEO is all the thing the last 10 years. It's what I've been working on my entire career for the most part. And now it's about what are you seeing and how are you processing it? Almost, is it fair to say sentiment? Like, is it fair to also think like not only what you're perceiving, but like that feeling? You're using the word feeling. So I'm curious, is it also like creating sentiments around shoppers and like is it joyful? Is it something that's creating a negative feeling?
That's certainly an application. Yes. AI can do a really good job, for example, even in call centers, detecting when somebody's getting pissed. So you know how to take corrective action, seriously, I mean, there's so much data that can be harnessed, and AI as a technology has been around for a long time. But it's the networks, the data has become richer and more mature and more accessible. And now you see ChatGPT and others where I think the transformational shift you're seeing and why there's now an arms race among brands and retailers is because in certain applications, like the ones we'll talk about today, there is like practical business value that can be unlocked really easily. Where maybe 3 years ago, 5 years ago, it still kind of felt like something that Captain Kirk had, something more ethereal. But now it's practical, it's actionable. It can be tied to business metrics.
And that business value is going to be unlocked by the person who learns how to most take advantage of it, right? And really use that to enhance their processes internally or their job, much more production than what they can achieve by themselves. So, okay,
yeah, absolutely.
Easy. So tell the audience a little bit about what Vizit does. And just for the audience's sake, I'm a huge fan of Vizit. You guys launched, 2.5 years ago-ish?
That's right.
And yep. I went to bat pretty quickly for you guys whenever I was on the brand side, because I got it, I understood it, I could see where this was going to be valuable in the brand side. So share with the teams that are listening in today, what does Vizit do and what do you guys focus on as it relates to industry?
Sure. So one of the most powerful assets that a brand has today, a retailer has today, really individual people have today is your image. And that image sort of shows up in different types and forms of content. And when you think about sort of the way that humans are sort of wired now, we're very visual creatures. We buy things based on what we see. We remember things in images, and they're ultimately what conditions us to purchase or repurchase a product. And so one of the things that we found at Vizit is that there's a lot of technology and a lot of sort of investment that had happened over the last few decades in understanding the voice of the customer. But the voice of the customer doesn't really address any of the points that I just made. We need to sort of advance our thinking to the view of the customer. What are people seeing? How are they reacting to what they see? And what we realized at Vizit is that there was never a way to actually measure the power of an image. No metrics on how effective or ineffective certain images are or aren't to define consumer audiences. So the simple way to think about Vizit is we're an AI company, and we have invented the first and only way to measure the conversion power of imagery for a defined audience. And we kind of allow our customers, give them a software platform that kind of enables teams to measure and monitor and create really effective content and automatically identify the imagery that helps increase sales for the audiences that they're seeking to attract. So it's a really, really fascinating kind of problem space when you think about imagery, because imagery is, as many of you know, is kind of infinite. There are infinite variables. Like, how many different ways could you photograph, a Taco Bell chalupa? Billions. But there is a right way for specific audiences. So we help to demystify the impact that imagery has.
So let's take the chalupa example here, because I think one really
Getting hungry.
Yeah, I know it's lunchtime. One thing that I've struggled with in my past experiences was trying to make marketing and sales and digital teams to accept the fact that imagery is not a one and done, and it's not only not just a one and done; it has to constantly evolve, but you create images based on your consumer sets, right? So is your Amazon imagery the same as your Target? Is it the same as your Kroger's? I'm gonna jump ahead of you, Jehan, and say no. The answer is no. But even so, like looking at Taco Bell chalupa, if I had a Taco Bell in demographic A versus demographic B, how do those images, differentiate based on culture, based on maybe the income levels? I mean, talk to me about how, not just like how brands should be thinking about it, but how does Vizit support that need whenever you think about differentiating your imagery, not to create a separate necessarily experience, but to resonate more with that consumer?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that kind of comes to mind for me immediately is one size fits no one.
Yeah.
And that couldn't be more true with content, because if you think of consumers today, like we're all consumers, and we live in a scroll, see, click type continuum on our phones.
I try hard not to.
That's right. The average person scrolls through 300 feet worth of mobile content on their phone every day. The average person spends over 3 hours looking at pictures every day, if you can believe it. I look at pictures for a living, so I'm probably higher than that. But,
you're bringing my average up.
That's right. But when you think about that sort of kind of constant sort of continuum of I see something, I like it, I click it, or I don't, it's inexplicable. But what it's forming over time is bias, and it's forming preference. It's one of the reasons why in this country there's a lot of divides between people. It's one of the reasons why different types of people kind of that grow up in different areas of the world develop different preferences, and it's because they're exposed to different things. And when you're exposed to different types of content, your brain starts to formulate naturally preferences for different things. And so when you think about creating content, every piece of content has a defined and desired audience, and that can be sort of as broad as the U.S. general population, or as narrow as, narcissistic motorcycle riders on the West Coast who have an income of over 100K a year. And the key is to really kind of harness and be able to develop, an approach that can help you see through the eyes of the consumers that you want to attract. And that's something that sometimes is very hard for brands and brand managers to accept on face value, is that we aren't our consumers.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, as much as we want to think we are, or that we know what they want, we don't see the world through their eyes. And so when you can sort of apply AI to help assist in that sort of problem, it kind of opens up an entire new world of possibilities.
It's just data insights on steroids.
Yeah, I mean, visually, so you think about, and another example to bring it to retail is the average shopper at Amazon, just demographically, psychographically, like who they are is different than the average shopper at Walmart. They're different people. Person who shops at Sephora is different than the person who shops at Target, different than the person who shops at REI. These are different audiences. And so creating content and syndicating that content to all of your retailers and expecting higher outcomes, it's not going to happen. So we're seeing now that there is data that sort of shows and helps identify and illuminate the most effective way to present products to different groups of people. You're seeing sort of this kind of transformation happen in the space where content is no longer thought of as a cost, but it's more of an investment. And that's a really important sort of reframing and remessaging of what content actually is, because it's an appreciating asset if you get it right, and it builds your moat as a company if you get it right and keep feeding that content, because ultimately, we're all competing in an attention economy against Netflix and everything else on the internet for our consumers' time, if you really think about it like that. So if you don't stand out visually, you won't have an at bat.
Traditional retail, this is no different than traditional retail whenever we spent a lot of money analyzing the digital shelf for our mod sets, right? Or I think Target POG sets, whatever retailer you're talking to, where we spent all this money supporting Catman teams to go in and analyze the digital shelf to try to come up with the pretty block, and how does it look like against our competitors, and are we going to get the prime real estate spot? I mean, this is really no different, except you don't rely on the retailer to give you any of that control. You can really control that narrative in your own digital shelf in that way by creating whatever image you want to create against your competitors.
Yeah. I mean, imagine in your next line review, if you're with your category team, your sales team, and you go to Walmart and you say, here's why we've already done the research, and we know that this is going to resonate with Walmart shoppers, and we know it's going to help you drive more growth in the category because of how effective it's going to be presented to your audience versus any of their other sort of alternative solutions for this particular category. You're going to, they're going to take a step back and you're going to really create a lot of credibility up front, because if you put yourselves in their shoes, you're going to see the world through their eyes. They're getting sold stuff, but they have a very unique set of customers, and they're trying to kind of create a unique shopping experience that's unique to Walmart, or if it's Target, it's their guest experience. And so if you can go in there and say, look, we've not only invested in the development of packaging and of kind of creative content and product content that is specifically engineered to make your shoppers kind of excited, and there's something that'll engage them, it's just going to be a much more productive conversation. And I think you'll be pretty excited about the sell-in rates.
So I'm going to pivot just a little bit. Thinking about Vizit's capabilities, I'm going to jump to conclusions here and suggest it's probably no different whenever you think about creating your retail media plan, right? And the images you use for promotions and advertising and et cetera, et cetera. So talk to me and the team a little bit about how does that look like from like a marketing and advertising marketing standpoint? How are those teams leveraging AI, or how could they leverage AI in order to enhance their return on investment for media spend like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's really two ways, and what's happening in the retail media world right now is just fascinating, and it's exciting because of like you said, the returns that are possible. But I can tell you that any brand that's spending a dime on retail media right now, if you add up all of that spend, and we've all seen the eMarketer forecasts, which are awesome and exciting, there are billions of dollars being left on the table and spend that's being wasted because we're driving really good traffic to ineffective product pages. Just imagine walking into a room, not liking what you see, you're going to walk out. We've all done that at a restaurant before. And really, so when you think about kind of maximizing the return on your retail media investments, I think of it in two fronts. The first is sort of the destination. So where and what traffic do you want to drive kind of visitors on a retailer to? So for each of your product pages, not only do you have enough content, but is that content effective? Is it enticing? Because as soon as they get to that product detail page, the majority of consumers actually look at the full carousel of images. And we've all done this when we've bought online. Something might show up in promoted search. We click it, we go to the page. If we don't like what we see, we click back and keep scrolling. And so in that moment, imagery really is the most powerful conditioner of purchase. So the more effective images you have, the higher your conversion rate, therefore the greater return on your retail media spend that you'll have. The second piece, though, is then that hero image. What is sort of the creative asset or the kind of product hero image if it's like a sponsored search listing? What are you showing consumers that's showing up in that search results page? That image is the gateway to consideration. So if you think about sort of any type of any advertising campaign digitally or on a retail media network, it has a face. It has something that people see. And if that image is not attention grabbing, your click-through rate's going to be lower. And what's going to then happen is you're driving less of that qualified traffic to your page, and you're kind of kicking yourself twice. Mm-hmm. So the way that we see our customers start to think about creating a flywheel around this is they'll focus on optimizing their images on their PDP first. First step of the flywheel is that increases their base conversion rate of their sales, like without any promotion.
Right.
The thing that then does, if it's a retailer like Amazon, is you're now then telling their algorithms that this is a more desirable product. Because if it's converting at a higher level and it's driving higher sales, you're going to get more organic positioning in search. So you can actually reduce your reliance on paid search by having a better converting product page and better converting content, right? But then the other beauty of that is now, like, if you have optimized images, you can reuse those same assets in your media to drive improved media effectiveness. So that media effectiveness is getting you, and we're all in this position, startups as well, like we all have to squeeze the orange a little bit more to try to squeeze out a little more performance. The days of growth at all costs are over. Profitable growth is sort of the shocking, right? It's the new thing that we all got to really lean into. And so what this basically happens what basically happens as a result of that is you kind of have this multi-pronged impact. And from an omni-channel perspective, 60% of people look at products online before they buy in store. I think it actually might be more than that now. So your investments in digital product imagery also drive in-store brick and mortar sales as well. So it's kind of this gift that keeps on giving when you embrace content as being a kind of a strategic pillar in your digital shelf optimization strategy.
I want to touch more on the flywheel. I think that this is very unrealistic for a lot of large brands where I'm about to go. I want to talk about product development and repackaging, right? Like redeveloping your product packaging. Because again, I think for a large company, it's going to be really hard to champion something like this. But I would challenge brands to think that the flywheel doesn't necessarily start at the PDP. It starts at the product packaging. Because if you could use your tech, I think, am I jumping to too many conclusions over here? I think I could use your tech to determine how I should put that packaging. Because a lot of the products that I've worked with in my past have images on them, right? It's an image and it's got call out what's important to the consumer. And so is that fair to even challenge the supplier if they're nimble enough to start that flywheel, even at reevaluating how their product is packaged? Because that would also benefit at shelf.
Absolutely. I think, every product has an appearance, right? It's something people see, whether it's packaging in CPG, or if it's the physical design of a product like a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. Getting that right is so important because that drives the success of every other visual execution, every piece of product photography that comes after it, bind time, memorability, all of that. It should start with product. And one of the things that we have seen at Vizit is I'd say like probably half of the kind of visual stimuli that we're analyzing are actually product concepts, product renderings, product variations, because traditionally those teams haven't really had access to much, if any, consumer insight
Yeah.
And if you kind of ever sit next to one of those like incredibly talented designers, they're working on dozens and dozens of different variations of things, and then somehow one or two of those make it to like a Kantar test. What about everything else? What
Yeah.
about all of the other sort of variations and sort of creativity that could be unleashed if you had the ability to see through your audience's eyes while you're building things? And I can actually put it to a real example. We're a software company. We use Visit to design our software. Like we have user interfaces, right? And we want our users to be attracted to and click on very specific things to be able to use our software most effectively.
That's so funny.
So, product development is so important because I mean, if you get your packaging wrong, it's like having a couch with three legs. You're going to wobble in the market for the next months, years. But if you flip this on its head as well, we've all also kind of been around large organizations where kind of new CMO comes in, new brand manager, and one of the first things they do is we need to redesign the packaging. And a multi-month, multi-million-dollar process. Sometimes you don't need to do that. Sometimes it's actually not a problem with the visual effectiveness of the packaging. It could be something else in the mix. Mm-hmm. So if you think about sort of the potential savings to an approach like this, it works in both redesign and knowing when exactly you need to do a redesign based on sort of how effective your packaging is relative to the kind of current digital or physical shelf, new competitor variants. And then when you're working on new innovation concepts or breakthrough innovation concepts where you maybe don't necessarily have sort of incumbents that you want to sort of outshine or kind of take share from, the best insight you could get is consumer insight. And if you've done surveys, you know that sometimes you can't always trust those written opinions. Sometimes sample is not, great. We all know this. But the truth is it's not that consumers are lying to you. It's that their preferences are often inexplicable. You see something, you like it, you click it. Oh, I like that. I'm going to add that to my cart. I'm going to buy it. And that sort of behavior that has now permeated all of digital commerce is something that an AI is really, really good at learning. And can be assistive, like you said, Alex, at the earliest stages of a new product concept.
We only have a few minutes left, and I want to be respectful of your time. But regarding product development, one of my very favorite examples for Vizit has been your partnership with an auto company where you helped them, and I'm going to mess up the data, so I'll let you say it, but you helped them essentially save not only money, but also years in rolling out a new version of their motorcycle product. Tell me a little bit about that. So just stepping away from grocery, maybe not even stepping away from grocery, just higher premium, larger margin items. Talk about that a little bit and maybe even dive into that case study, if you don't mind, just really quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So at a really high level, image effectiveness, to your point, it is extremely important for both low consideration purchases and high consideration purchases. The key is understanding your audience, who your audience is. And we've been very, very fortunate to work with an incredibly innovative and talented team at Harley-Davidson. And if you think about Harley-Davidson, they are their brand is freedom. It's American heritage. It's one of the most well-known brands there is. But they have a growing portfolio of motorcycles. And they don't just sell in the US, they sell all around the world. And they know that their audiences in different parts of the world like different things. Mm-hmm. And so when you think about the design of something like a car or a motorcycle, that is an extremely expensive proposition to kind of build and manufacture. And it's also extremely confidential. So any new product designs, they're not kind of taking examples through the showroom and showing consumers these are very sort of, again, kind of confidential concepts. Think of like a new Apple iPhone. Yeah. It's locked down. And so, one of the really cool things that we were able to help Harley-Davidson with was to identify sort of the most effective ways to kind of use color waves in their bikes so that they could kind of improve the appeal of a specific bike design, and have it resonate with multiple markets. So if you think about the cost of research, how expensive would it be to do that research in multiple markets? But even more expensive, how expensive would it be to then have to redesign your bike after you did that sort of testing? So we saved them $5 million last year and about 2 years of development and kind of research time on a new motorcycle.
That's wild. And I think that where I want to tie this back to, we're at time, but where I wanted to tie that back to is even on CPG, creating a new product by identifying gaps in the market, by identifying those things that are going to resonate most with a customer or consumer, I think is so valuable, where your AI really has a lot of different purposes of intent to support a retailer and supplier. So that's amazing. Well, Jehan, we are past the time a minute. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was, even for me, who I feel like a little familiar with your company, I've learned so much today. So do you have any closing remarks or anything you'd like to share with the audience before we jump?
Well, thank you, Alex. The only thing that I'd say is if you're listening today to this conversation, you are already way ahead of the curve, that you're thinking about AI and you're thinking about applying technology differently. And I think as you sort of are thinking about building a business case around AI, whether it's Visits or any other AI that you're considering, I would really partner with your stakeholders and think about how a technology can help not only create efficiency in your process, but drive performance gains. And if you can partner with your vendors and with your internal team and any of your other stakeholders on figuring out how to build a business case, I think you'll be very, very surprised at or pleasantly surprised at the receptiveness that you'll hear. And the worst thing to do is to just wait for somebody else to figure it out first, because they're going to have a multi-month or multi-year advantage. So I would start putting together proofs of concept, pilots, and get experimental with what you could learn and what value you could uncover with AI. And I would keep asking Alex lots of questions. She knows what she's talking about. There's a lot of just really cool work that she and the e-grocery team are doing. And again, just excited to be here. So thanks for having me, Alex.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And if audience members, we will send out Visit's sales contact information and marketing. If you guys have any questions or want to take the conversation further, I know people from the team would be happy to take those emails. So Jehan, thank you so much, founder and CEO of Vizit. We appreciate you joining us today for this wonderful conversation, digital transformation. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Bye.